This is Savitri's response to death, to the god of death, who was expressing to her the vanity of the ideal, the gospel of death and the vanity of the ideal. That was the previous canto. And there systematically he went through and debunked all possible ideals: love, truth, bliss, God, even matter. You know? That's what he does. He dissolves, he destroys. But now we are reading about Savitri's answer. And we are more or less in the middle of her answer about bliss. She says that bliss is not an illusion or a delusion. It's not an impossible ideal. Everything that exists is supported by a secret air of pure felicity. If this withdrew, the world would sink in the void. If this were not, nothing could move or live. A hidden bliss is at the root of things. And she explained how that hidden bliss is hidden, it hides itself. It hides itself in all the forms of our world. It doesn't reveal itself easily. It expresses itself in all kinds of things that we can grasp and recognize and experience. But at last, at the bottom of page 631, he says, at last the soul turns to eternal things. In every shrine it cries for the clasp of God. The soul aspires to feel the embrace of the divine in every material form and movement. And then is achieved the longed for miracle. We'll read on from there. Immortal bliss, her wide celestial eyes opens on the stars. She stirs her mighty limbs. Time thrills to the suffix of her amour song, and space fills with a white beatitude. Then, leaving to its grief the human heart, abandoning speech and the name-determined realms, through a gleaming, far-seen sky of wordless thought, through naked, thought-free heavens of absolute sight, she climbs to the summits where the unborn idea, remembering the future that must be, looks down upon the works of laboring force, immutable above the world it made. In the vast golden laughter of truth's sun, like a great heaven bird on a motionless sea, is poised her winged ardor of creative joy on the still deep of the eternal's peace. This was the aim, this the supernal law, nature's allotted task when beauty drenched in dim mist waters of inconscient sleep, out of the void this grand creation rose. For this the Spirit came into the abyss and charged with its power matter's unknowing force. In night's bare session to cathedral light, in death's realm repatriate immortality. A mystic, slow transfiguration works. All our earth starts from mud and ends in sky. And love, that was once an animal's desire, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, an ardent comradeship in the happy mind, becomes a wide spiritual yearning space. A lonely soul passions for the alone. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. A body is his chamber and his shrine. Then is our being rescued from separateness. All is itself. All is new felt in God. A lover leaning from his cloister's door gathers the whole world into his single breast. Then shall the business fail of night and death, when unity is won, when strife is lost, and all is known and all is clasped by love. Who would turn back to ignorance and pain? Who will read first? Rosa will read. All right. Top of page 632.
Immortal bliss, her white celestial eyes opens on the stars. She stores her mighty limbs, time thrills to the suffix of her amount song, and space fills with a white beauty,
Beatitude. So this is telling us the experience, what comes when at last the soul turns to eternal things. And she's been speaking on the theme of bliss, of delight, the role that delight plays in the in the creation, if this secret air of pure felicity, if this withdrew, the whole world would sink into the emptiness. All this exists because it is supported by the secret air of pure felicity, pure delight. So when the soul turns to eternal things, then at last is achieved the miracle that we are all longing for. There's a beautiful flower, and they are flowering in our garden at the moment. It's divine's love governing the world. And I think that's what we are all longing for, the world to be ruled not by our imperfect mentalities, our lower nature, but by the divine's love. So a moment comes for the soul. It's as if the bliss which is sleeping, hidden in everything, hidden in matter and unconsciousness, opens her eyes. She wakes up. She moves. She stirs her mighty limbs, like us waking up in the morning. We've been lying, sleeping. We open our eyes. We move about. And when she does that, time thrills to the suffix of her amour song. It's as if the whole of time thrills with delight. And Sri Aurobindo expresses it in terms of poetry, suffix. This word comes into English from the name of a Greek poetess who lived 2,500 years ago. And she wrote in a particular rhythm, a particular meter, and that meter and form of verse, it is called sapphic. And it's used particularly for love songs, songs of love and adoration. So, amour, it's the French word for love.
It's French, no? It's not English, no?
No, but it's one of the French words that Sri Aurobindo uses.
That's French.
Amour. Yeah. And it exists in our adjective amorous,
Yes.
in love. So time and space are the fundamentals of our universe. No? We experience everything here in terms of time and space. So what he's saying is that the whole world, the time aspect, where everything is extended moment by moment, and the space aspect, where things are spread out in distance, all this, the time and the space, is filled with bliss. The time thrills in rhythm to the suffix, the poetry of this love song. And space, the whole of space, infinite space, is filled with a white beatitude. Beatitude is the feeling of being utterly blessed. And he says white. In a sense, we can say featureless. Well, there's the rhythm of the suffix, but space is filled. There's no limit, there's no feature. It's pure white bliss. That's the atmosphere, becomes the atmosphere which the soul breathes.
Then leaving to its grief the human heart, abandoning speech and a name determined realms, through a gleaming, far-seeing sky of a wordless thought, through naked thought-free heavens of absolute sight. She climbed to the summit where the unborn idea, remembering the future that must be, looks down upon the works of a laboring force, immutable above the world it made.
So this is a very mysterious sentence. This bliss which has been sleeping in matter, no, wakes up, and it's as if it leaves our world, leaving to its grief the human heart. She leaves it behind, and she starts rising to higher and higher levels. She goes beyond the realm of speech, the mental realm. And this world, which is determined by names. If you don't have a name for something, you can't really grasp it until you give it a name. That's what our mind needs to do. So name and form go together, and very difficult to separate them. But that's what she does. She moves away from this realm where all our thinking and perception is determined by forms and names for them. She rises up through, as if through a sky, which we see from a distance, or she begins to see it from a distance, a sky where thought is wordless. It doesn't need to express itself in words. It's like a sky, a level of atmosphere. And even higher than that, there are naked, thought-free heavens, where there's no thought. It's not only the thought is wordless, there's no thought at all, there's a direct perception, sight. Thought-free heavens of absolute sight, where whatever is known or perceived is known directly without any intervention of thought. And she goes on moving higher until she climbs to the summits, the very highest levels, where the unborn idea is looking down on the world. Idea with a capital I. It's like the origin. It's not the very origin, but the manifestation starts when there's in the form of an idea. And then that idea might get expressed in thought and in word, and it might influence the will and produce action or a creation. So above this world of ours, there's a high realm of idea, the idea. And that idea, he says, is remembering the future that must be, the destined future of this universe that we live in. So there's the idea, always looking down, remembering what has to be. And because it's holding that consciousness, what has to be is gradually being manifested, no? But there it is, seeing what has to be. I suppose we could say it is something like when Roget got the inspiration for the galaxy plan of Auroville. He got it first as an idea, and then he needed his team to help him to express that idea. He did some sketches like this to communicate his idea to them. But they then had to prepare the models, and he had to criticize them and say, yes, that's right and that is not right, and please change it. And now we are trying to build that idea. So something like that is going on in evolution. There's an idea at the beginning of it, and then the seed starts to grow in the unconsciousness, and gradually things manifest, and they are somehow prompted by that creative idea which was there at the beginning. And all that development, which we call evolution, is described as the works of laboring force. The conscious force is working to realize, to manifest that idea. But the idea itself is immutable. It doesn't change. There it is, looking down. It's immutable, above the world that it made. Yes.
I think I understand what you're telling about the idea. Even I understand the unborn idea, I can imagine something with it. But how I can remember the future and at the same time having an unborn idea, that's difficult for me.
So this happens in the timeless realm. Before everything gets spread out into time and space, it's all seen together. If you have an idea, it is like that. You get an idea, and then you work it out.
Same time.
But through time and through space, no? Yeah.
I think what it is, remembering the future is that it's trying to imagine the future. So remembering is going through that, how that should be, just coming again to that remembering. And the unborn is, I think, refers to the material work. It hasn't, not the unborn idea, because it cannot be the unborn idea.
No, here in this case, it means the idea which the transcendent being, creative being, had at the very beginning. And this idea actually corresponds in Sri Aurobindo's philosophy to the supramental realm. Yeah.
This for me touched the connection to Sri Aurobindo with the Heraclito. Everything happened at the same time. I mean, it's nothing like the before you're born, after, It's like, everything is touching. You remember the future because it's in the same moment. For me, that's this idea.
We could, if we say when, it's already wrong. But we can imagine a state in which all potentiality is coexistent. And then there's an idea, an intention, a creative intention, which says, let's see what happens if we spread all this out. If we spread it out successively in time, if we spread it out in space, if instead of all this being in the consciousness of one, of the one, we sprinkle it out into many, many different individual consciousnesses.
In thought forms, we can say like that. In thought forms, the idea will manifest as thought forms.
First, perhaps it manifests as soul forms, and then as mind forms, and then living forms. But all this is in the involutionary process. Then, in that involutionary process, all these planes of existence somehow come into being. And then, when all that is squashed together, kaleidoscoped together into matter, apparently unconscious matter, it starts to slowly, step by step by step by step, gradually come out. I suppose it's something like a plant producing a seed, and then it lets the seed go, and gradually the seed, if it falls in favorable conditions, it carries out the idea that's coded in to that little seed. Gradually the big tree manifests, something like that. These are only ways for us in our mental state to begin to imagine how it really is. Does that answer your question, Tom? So, in that highest summit that comes in the next sentence, will you read, Anandi?
In the vast golden laughter of truth's sun, like a great heaven bird on a motionless sea, is poised her winged ardor of creative joy on the still deep of the eternal's peace.
Yes, beautiful lines. So this is the bliss then on that highest level. We can say in the Ananda state or the Ananda world. Then it's as if she's a bird, a beautiful, great heaven bird. And she's basking in the light, the vast golden light, laughter of the sun of truth, which is spreading out its light, its energy. That bird is floating on a very, very calm sea, a motionless sea. There she is, perhaps like a swan. There, it's poised, it doesn't move, it's in equilibrium and balancing. Her winged ardor of creative joy is poised on the still deep, the ocean, the unmoving ocean of the peace of the eternal. So this bird has wings. These wings express the power of flight, higher flight, and enthusiasm, ardor. It's a enthusiastic, happy wish to do something, energy to do something. So this bliss, her ardor, expresses the joy of creation, creative joy. This is in the highest state, before the... No, wrong word. Above the point where the creation starts to happen. If we look at ourselves, or at children, for example, perhaps the greatest joy we can get is through expressing that creative joy, or allowing that bliss of creative joy to express itself through us. Yesterday I saw a little film about some tiny tots, 3, 4, 5 years old, who'd been taken into a forest to play. And what they did, there was one little boy, he found a big stick that he could hardly lift, but he took it and he found a flat place and he laid it out there, and then he found another stick that he could put across it the other way. Very carefully he balanced it. And then he called his friends and he said, "It's an aeroplane. Where do you want to go?" So they all climbed on board. Beautiful. Yeah, sorry, creative joy. And as I read these lines, I mean, I think what creative joy Sri Aurobindo must have experienced as they came through. Yeah. So now you can read Anandi.
This was the end. This, the supernal road. Nature's alone task from beauty drenched in dim mist waters of unconscious sleep. Out of the void this grand creation rose. For this the spirit came to the abyss and charged with his power matter's unknown force. The night's birth session to cathedral light in death's realm repatriated immortality.
Yes. To reach that highest state of fulfillment, when the immortal bliss of our soul reaches that highest level of fulfillment. This was the aim. That's why the manifestation happened. This is the law, the supreme law that's built into our manifestation, that this fulfillment should happen. This is the task that was given to nature, to the creative force working in matter. And then the description of the creation, when out of the void, out of the emptiness, this grand creation rose. It happened. Nowadays, the scientists tend to think of it as a great explosion, the Big Bang. And perhaps it didn't take long, but that the coming into being of this manifestation, it happened. We should start here. The grand creation rose. It emerged. And it was so beautiful, drenched, soaked with beauty. It's drenched with beauty in these misty waters, perhaps like you blow up a bubble and it bursts. There's tiny little droplets of water. So like that, soaked with that beautiful water, these dim mist waters. Mist is made up of tiny little droplets of water. There's not much light in them because these waters are waters of sleep. The consciousness is withdrawn. It's not expressed outwardly as this vast creation emerges out of the nothingness, out of the emptiness. The intention at that time when the first manifestation in matter began. And what was intended was the fulfillment when the soul wakes up to bliss. And for this experience, the spirit left its blissful oneness above, plunged, dived down into the deep, dark emptiness, and charged with its power the unknowing force of matter. The matter seemed to be unconscious. How could it begin to change, to evolve, to develop? Only because it's charged with the spirit's force, No? So he says it was, the aim was, the purpose was, it's described in the next two lines. In night's bare session to cathedral light, in death's realm repatriate immortality. So these lines have to be explained. First, there's this status, position of night, of darkness and apparent unconsciousness. In that darkness, it's intended to build a vast structure of light. But he uses this word cathedral. The word means a sacred, big, on a large scale, a sacred building. It's a noun. We always use it as a noun. Sri Aurobindo here uses it as a verb. This is a real trap for translators. You can always test the quality of the translation by checking this line. Has the translator understood that this is a verb? To create a cathedral out of light and for light. That's one way of expressing it. The other way of expressing it is in order to repatriate immortality. To repatriate somebody means to send them back to their real native place, to their country, their true home. To repatriate somebody. So it's as if in death's realm, immortality has been exiled, but he has to be brought back. No? So it won't be death's realm anymore. It will be the realm of immortality. One more sentence. Mila, please.
A mystic slow transfiguration works. All over earth starts from mud and ends in the sky. And love that was once an animal's desire, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, an ardent comradeship in the happy man, becomes a wide spiritual yearning space.
Yes. So this all happens, this transfiguration, this transformation, transmutation. Transfiguration specially means turning everything into its most divine appearance. So it works very slowly. It's mysterious, mystical. So all our earth starts from mud, but it moves upwards to sky. And then she says that this applies to all our earthly qualities. Particularly, she mentions love. Love that was once an animal's desire evolves to become some beautiful human emotion, no? A sweet madness in the rapturous heart. Or another form it may take, perhaps it's a higher form, an ardent, intense, passionate comradeship, close friendship in the happy mind. This is also a very beautiful kind of relationship to the comradeship of two minds. But even that's not the ultimate. It eventually becomes like a vast space filled with spiritual yearning, longing. And that longing gets satisfied or expresses itself as a lonely soul, feeling passionate for the alone. Shall we go to the end of the passage? Yes. I can't see properly. Would you read? Yes.
A lonely soul patient for the alone, the heart that loved man thrilled to the love of God. A body is his chamber and his shrine. Then is our being resource from separateness. All itself, all is new felt in God. A lover learning from his closest door. Gather the whole world into his single breast.
Thank you. Yes. So it starts from a soul which longs only for the one, for the supreme. The heart that which has in its development learned to love human beings begins to experience and feel the love of God. And then a human body can become the living place and the shrine of the divine himself. This is the relationship that Savitri had with Shraddhavan. She saw in him the supreme, the embodiment of the supreme. So when we come to that kind of divine love, then our whole being is rescued from this state of separateness that we are in now. There's an identification. We read this in Savitri on Sunday. Everything is itself. Everything is felt anew in a new way because it's experienced in the divine. And then it's as if the Lord himself leans out. He's been hiding away in his cloister. A cloister is a secluded place. It's where monks and nuns will retreat to be away from the world. So it's as if the divine presence has been hiding himself in the cloister, but now he leans out and gathers the whole world into his single breast. Joel, you will read.
Then shall the business fail of night and death, when unity is won, when strife is lost, and all is known and all is clasped by love. Who would turn back to ignorance and pain?
This is not difficult to understand. No? This is the experience when we feel the whole world being governed by the divine's love. This is what was intended. This is the reason why we're all here. This is the reason why we agreed to leave our blissful oneness and to accept this adventure of involution and then evolution. And now perhaps we wonder why our souls thought that would be worthwhile. But when we pass through the whole process, we shall be sure, we will know that it was all worthwhile. Shall we read these lines together? Try to read them slowly, get the beautiful rhythm and the consciousness that they carry. Immortal bliss, her wide celestial eyes opens on the stars. she stirs her mighty limbs. Time thrills to the sapphics of her amour song, and space fills with a white beatitude. Then, leaving to its grief the human heart, abandoning speech and the name-determined realms, through a gleaming, far-seen sky of wordless thought, through naked, thought-free heavens of absolute sight, she climbs to the summits where the unborn idea, remembering the future that must be, looks down upon the works of labouring force, immutable above the world it made. In the vast golden laughter of truth's sun, like a great heaven bird on a motionless sea, is poised her winged ardour of creative joy on the still deep of the Eternal's peace. This was the aim, this the supernal law, nature's allotted task when beauty drenched in dim mist waters of inconscient sleep, out of the void this grand creation rose. For this the Spirit came into the abyss, and charged with its power matter's unknowing force. In night's bare session to cathedral light, in death's realm repatriate immortality. A mystic, slow transfiguration works. All our earth starts from mud and ends in sky, and love that was once an animal's desire, then a sweet madness in the rapturous heart, an ardent comradeship in the happy mind, becomes a wide spiritual yearning's space. A lonely soul passions for thee alone. The heart that loved man thrills to the love of God. A body is his chamber and his shrine. Then is our being rescued from separateness. All is itself, all is new felt in God. A lover, leaning from his cloister's door, gathers the whole world into his single breast. Then shall the business fail of night and death. When unity is won, When strife is lost, and all is known, and all is clasped by love, who would turn back to ignorance and pain?